Thank you. As time is always pressing and I tend to speak too long when I get started, I will wade right into it. The perspective from which I've come, and most of my talks are about related to policy reform and inclusive growth. So that is the perspective I will also take here, just to warn you, because given the limited time, then other details if there is time for questions. So I'm basically going to make 4 points. One is the pre-COVID economy, where we were before COVID, the COVID period and what has happened there. Then the central topic of the talk which was given to me, challenges and growth trajectory. And finally, I will give you a little picture, a graph, which is very important because people have all kinds of conceptions of India and China which are not correct actually. So it's a base graph based on World Bank data, which will tell you what the facts are. The conclusions are yours. So pre-COVID reforms and growth. A former reporter of The Hindu, Pooja Mehta, wrote a book called The Lost Decade. And we just heard my friend Sanjay Baru say that this was the most fastest growing period in the country's history. Actually, both are true. And that's why I warned you in the beginning, it's a lost decade from the point of view of policy reform. And to put it very simply, we were coasting on the reforms which preceded it till 2003, which includes both the Narasimha Rao Manmohan Singh period and the Vajpayee period. But the reforms ground to a halt during this period. And I was there. I was CA during this period, so I'm not speaking as an outsider. And one of the reasons, of course, one was the reforms, but the second reason why you didn't see it was there was an artificial boost from the fiscal monetary side. Again, we don't want to go into all the details, but think of it as Indian counterpart of the credit bubbles you're seeing in China. Okay, it was our version, it was much milder, whatever, but that was. And again, as I said, believe me, I was there. On this respect, my recommendation was not followed, and I left in 2009. Okay. So coming to the, after that, so coming to the 13-14 period, remember that in 2013 we have a mini BOP crisis. That's why I mentioned the macro monetary imbalances. Okay, so I'm not talking just out of the. So what happened after that? There was macro stabilization and institutional reform. I just mentioned a few, the legal India Business Code, constitutional reforms in terms of the goods and services tax, which was the biggest economic constitutional reform in India's history actually, though there are a lot of problems with it, which I'll come to. Monetary policy inflation targeting. This is one of the keys. I'll just mention it because the general public doesn't know. One of the reforms we had was major reform. Monetary, something called inflation targeting. For 2 years, 3 years, I actually was on the advisory committee of the RBI, which then became the MPC, which I wasn't, of course, before that. So again, the problem was the reform was good, but the way it was carried out, excessively ideologically, huge tightening of the monetary system. And this is not something post hoc. We used to raise this issue in the Monetary Policy Advisory Committee right to Raghuram Rajan's face, but we were not listened to. Okay, so you got the idea. Two more, which are very important because there are a lot of misconceptions. Anti-black money laws and demonetization. Demonetization didn't happen out of the blue. It was a culmination of process of black money laws. Again, we don't have to go anti-black money laws, okay, where there was huge public pressure. People forget, it didn't happen out of the blue. From 2011, there was a case in the Supreme Court against black money in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court later appointed a SAT on black money. This just didn't happen out of the blue. Demonetization had some very bad consequences. We don't have time to go into it. and the issue of Make in India protection bias. This is an important issue which I want to say something about. This is Sanjay and many others think that we are still in that regime. Actually, it turns out we are not. That's why I'm particularly giving you a little bit of data which brings it out very clearly. This is a graph of the simple average tariff rate taken from WTO. Okay, not invented by me or the government of India or by anybody else. It's the authentic WTO data. And look at that peak there on the right hand side. That is 2018 and 19. Yes, there was an increase in protection, about 2.5% increase in the simple average tariff. It's already down. Half of that has already been reversed. What has happened? What has happened is that we moved from Make in India concepts, and which was linked to this black money demonetization, a different policy approach, to one where we want to increase competitiveness. So half the adjustment has already taken place. It's an important point. You'll keep hearing India is becoming more protectionist. Remember that blue line. That blue line is the trend. We are already back on the trend. Okay? I think we should go further. I'll tell you why. Okay, so we come to the COVID period. So here I'll make some outrageous statements which we can take up further in the thing. In my view, the reforms which have happened from 2019 to 21 are the most significant set of reforms since the 90s reforms. Remember, we are talking about 2 years here. The set of reforms, remember what I said? From Narasimha Rao to Vajpayee. That is 2 terms, 10 years. Okay? It didn't happen all in 91. There was a big push in 91, but it took 10 years. We are just talking about 2 years here. So what is it? If this commitment and spirit of reform which is there is maintained, could be the most significant reform since 1990. That's the assertion which I'm making. Why? Because there's a change in philosophy and approach and attitude. There's a clear shift from a communist socialist ideological perspective to a market economy with a modern welfare democracy. I'm talking only about economics. Please don't get into a debate about politics here. I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about the economic philosophy. Key role of entrepreneurs as job and wealth creators. It's a huge change, massive change in the approach. Openness to information knowledge. These are more detail which I don't have time to go into. And finally, the institutional reform to complement policy reform. My field of expertise has been policy reform, but 10 years ago when I was, before I became CA, I began to talk about institutional reform, because in a way, that is the next stage, because the policy was so messed up that you could easily see where to reform, but now you're getting to finer and finer points. Just a little bit more on this. I don't know if I've already used up too much time here. I can skip this. Sorry. Let me be faster here. Oops, it's disappeared. Something has disappeared. I hope it's, somehow it got changed here. Okay. The policy, approach of government coming from director and doer of everything to facilitator. Comprehensive systematic liberalization. What do I mean by that? It's every production and service sector that was left out of the 90s reforms is being one by one focused on. Agriculture is complicated if anybody wants to discuss, but space, atomic energy, everything is being opened up. BPOs, work from home, drone policy, geo-mapping, it's systematic, one by one, every area of infrastructure. Factor markets, this is an old gripe we used to say, second generation reforms covers production sector, which I've just told you, that the second generation have to cover factor markets. It's happening now. Public sector privatization and the whole reform of the public, fundamental reform of the public sector. Okay, so institutional reform, ease of doing business, etc. You've probably heard a lot about, perhaps, Gati Shakti, I would point out. It's a way of integrating. It's something we used to do in the Planning Commission. One of the major objectives of planning and usefulness used to be coordination of infrastructure. Different ways being implemented, but it is being done. Perhaps some of the old way has to come back. Again, I don't have time to discuss. And legal judicial reforms. Okay, Very slow in process, but will happen. Oops, this has gone to the other. Okay, it doesn't matter. So inclusive welfare democracy, what does that mean? Classic public health issues for 50 years were neglected. In the Narasimha Rao, Manmohan Singh era, we tried, I tried, others tried to bring them back into the center. They have come back, finally. Swachh Bharat, very important initiative, because, and it's moving from toilet, water, sanitation, sewage. You know, I did 2 papers on this about 15 years ago, okay? And at that time, everybody used to ignore these issues. Targeted transfers, so eliminate waste and corruption, equality of opportunity, education and health. Digital economy I want to mention particularly because in my view it's going to be a key driver of inclusive growth in at least the next 5 to 7 years. Some of the reasons why this whole the work from home and the work from anywhere movement, I see it as an instrument for overcoming social constraints. So, I mean, just to give an extreme example, if a woman or an SC in a village, they can work from home. They don't have to go out and people start saying, this is not your work. You go and do X, Y, Z. You can't go out of the home, but you can do this from home. It's going to be a big driver. And quality of education and health, okay? So, again, the e-skilling, e-health, it is going to transform the quality of education received by not people like us who have access to good schools and colleges, but in the rural areas. Green economy, okay. Oops, it's all become like this. Something got combined. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What are my concerns? So first, 2 concerns. So I'm going to the second point here. I've given you the first point of the transformation which is happening. So what are my concerns? So informal share was large for the level of our per capita GDP and has become more normal due to this black money. As I indicated, there were huge problems with it. I never in my, the demonetization used to be something proposed by the communists and leftists, which I always opposed during my time in government. I opposed it because I never saw a reason, and their whole approach used to be to sick the private sector, have demonetization, I don't want to use an unpleasant word, and the big guys. And clearly there was a problem here. Now, epidemic, negative impact on the, sorry. I don't put it like this, it should come. Okay, let me just put all of them and go ahead because it's, so epidemic, negative impact on the informal sector. Now there's no direct data. All kinds of people will tell you how they are sure all this is problematic. There's nothing sure, but there are some indicators. One of the reasons is that there's a sharp decline in contact services like trade, like your guy who sells stuff on the roads, etc. So that as the and that has affected income, jobs, etc. So we know that this sector is bad. We don't have specific data on the informal sector or the jobs or the poor for the sector as such, but indirectly. The second indicator is private consumption is one of the few things which hasn't recovered. So that gives us an indicator because consumer expectation surveys show that there's a huge decline in optimism. So these 2 things together. Now, much of this is temporary and will revive with vaccination and the increase in what we call contact services. As I said, trade, tourism, hospitality, the guy on your street who sells stuff and all that. But we must ensure quicker adjustment and a level playing field for MSMEs, and that requires tax reform. These are technical things. I have put them in an appendix. It will be there if you want to see it. I'm sure it will be on the website. But the basic point here is that we must enhance MSMEs' competitiveness by reducing cost of doing business, leveling the playing field, and this is particularly the direct tax code reform, because the corporate tax was reformed in September 2019. That's when this set of reform began. But we've not done that for the small people, and it's very vital to level the playing field. Provide a consumption stimulus, a bit of a technical thing here, but the GST reform, the GST is too complicated and has to be reformed. Remember, you may think this is a contradiction. No, the constitutional amendment had to be passed. You had to pass, you get the approval of a majority of states. There were compromises made which made it a very complicated system. Okay, in the absence of the compromises, we know what a simple system, and it's time now to go back to that. So that is the GST, and then to promote the supply chain shift to India. You've all heard about the risks of China supply chains, etc., etc. To do that, we need to do customs reform and stimulate labor-intensive manufacturing. And this is not esoteric. As I said, I've given you an indication in the appendix of how to do it. Okay, so as I said that before I come to the India-China comparison, if this is done in the right spirit in which I have seen it done in the last 2 years, we expect a growth rate of 10% plus minus 1%. And this is something I said a year ago. You'll hear a lot of people talking about base effects now, after the fact. The base effect had to be taken account of, which is why I could say confidently that there would be a 10% growth rate a year ago. Why? Because of the base effect. But many of my friends, who I do not want to name, who are prominent economists, you'll read them in the newspapers, didn't think about the base effect then. You know what they said? It's down to minus 7%. It may will go to 0 or actually be negative. Why? Because in the first quarter, it was down by 25%. GDP was down by 1/4. That's what the base effect is. You couldn't see it then. I'm emphasizing this because these are solid economists. They are friends who have discussed these issues for 20, 30, 40 years. Basic elementary mistake. Anyway, again, I don't want to get into technical. This is not a technical audience, but we did the analysis of the entire COVID spread, the implication of that, etc. Again, if there's a question, I will go into it. And for the future, which is where the structural reform comes in, which I mentioned to you, that I have predicted that we'll get into the 7% to 8% rate. Again, this is at least 6 to 9 months ago when I was clear that the reform is happening. Okay? After the budget, I made this forecast. I have seen now 2 forecasts which are inching up to over 7%. I'll just put down the assumptions because I don't want to, I just want to show you this graph. Let's see, do we have a pointer? It would help to put on my specs, sorry. Okay, so what are these? These are 3 graphs. This is a pointer works? No. No, okay. So the best thing is to look at that first, the red graph, okay? That is an index which I had devised about 20 years ago of economic power, which I also call the power potential. And as Sanjay said, the power is a pyramid which is built on the basic economic power over which you have military and diplomatic, right? So this is the foundation, in a way, of the total power. Now, the 2 things I want to, oh yeah, here it is. So see 2 things here. One is that this ratio, this is the ratio of power, right? So India's power relative to China has been declining right through till this point, which is, if I should have noted it, but this is somewhere around 2013, 12, 13, okay? The relative power of India was declining. Not only the relative power, but this is the GDP measured in PPP, the blue line. The green line is in the normal one, which you read the current dollars. All of them were declining. India's GDP relative to China. This is all World Bank data, not government data, not my data. Please remember this. And think about what I said about the lost decade. Since then, it flattened out. This is the second time I've been wrong. I had predicted that this would then bottom out and start rising here. These graphs are all in books and articles I've written. So I admit it right publicly. That surprised me. So that is the problem, that the reforms stopped, and then you made certain, it's not an error. You see, I don't want to comment on socio-political things, but as I said, if I was going after black money, I would have done it much more gradually. Okay, there was too much. And what I have shown in several papers is that if you have a huge reform, whether it's policy reform or institutional reform, you can get a negative effect. It's called a J-curve effect. Okay? So the more, if you don't plan it carefully, you can get big negative effects before the positives come in. So you lose. I mean, if that negative is like for 5 years, I mean, it's not worth it, right? But that's a later judgment. I'm just talking technically economics, okay? So, what is this? Everybody is focusing here. This is that base effect. This is terrible. That 7.3% is the worst, is one of the worst among any countries. But it is temporary. On that is going to go back to the thing. And so these are the projections, okay? So go back to the red line. So the projections, and I've given you the assumptions on which these are based, it is now going to be on a rising curve, okay? So the relative power, that will determine your relative power. It's happening, it's going to happen. If I'm still alive 10 or 15 years from now, you can call me and we'll have a relook at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.